What's up? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Danny here with my buddy Randy. What's up, Randy?
Yo, Danny.
So today we're just talking. Open.
Yeah,
Open
just
discussion.
talking.
Could
Just
go anywhere.
talking. Could go anywhere. I've
Yeah,
been listening to Marcus Aurelius's Meditations again recently. So good.
nice. It is good.
Yeah,
It's a great book. I read that
so
book,
freaking good.
I want to say I've read it at least like a handful of times, if not more. Probably more. Parts of it I definitely read
Okay.
a lot.
So actually, another interesting book was one that I listened to on YouTube a while ago, but then I couldn't find it because I took the audiobook away off of YouTube. So I actually found the book. It's called The Way. I forget, but it's basically like an instruction manual for like a Zen meditation retreat. So
Oh,
like if you like
nice.
Zen Mind, Beginner Mind, you might find this one interesting because it starts out something along the lines of don't do yourself the disservice of thinking you're supposed to do anything other than just be right here, right now, being.
Yeah. I mean, that's a
And it's
good.
just, dude, right? Pretty cool
And
start to it. Because it's like that's what I'm always doing is trying to not be here
well,
right
that's what
now.
I was thinking about that the other day, and I think that is like the at least for me, and I think it's a lot of people, I would assume, but like, dude, it's the expectations we place on ourselves and that have been placed on us from ex that we might not even know. Like, I think about that a lot. Like, the expectations our parents, our teachers had for us and all that, like, you still internalize that, even if you don't like consciously, reference it a lot. And I think all
Hmm.
of that weighs on us so much and takes us out of the present because we're constantly evaluating ourselves based on other stuff, other people, things, and just not like living our actual life in the here and now, which is the only
Yeah.
place we can be. I mean, we can't be anywhere else.
Yeah, they call it the tyranny of the shoulds.
Yeah,
I should do this, I shouldn't do that. Or they also call it masturbation.
yeah, that also works. That's a good one.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I can't so like I've been messing around with the stuff they have in those books, Feeling Good, Feeling Great. And one thing that they have is a daily mood log. So like when you have an upsetting event, you write down the upsetting event, you write down how you feel, and then you write down the thoughts that are going through your mind at that time. And I've been doing that, and it's really interesting because I find a lot of my thoughts are shoulds. Like a lot of
Yeah,
them. Because that's one of the cognitive distortions is shoulds. And in reality, there's only three shoulds. There's laws of nature shoulds, like
you gotta
you
eat, you
drop
gotta
something and
drink.
it
Yeah,
falls. Well,
yeah.
you drop something and it falls to the ground,
Oh,
gravity. It
okay,
should
okay.
fall to the
There's
ground. There's law morality type laws in general, like you shouldn't kill, you shouldn't do that stuff.
generally,
And then
yeah,
there's the legal things like you shouldn't exceed the speed limit because then you'll get a ticket, you know? But
yeah.
that's pretty much any other shoulds are just kind of not beneficial because
But
they're
there's
just
a
made
ton of
up.
them that we place on ourselves. That's the problem.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
actually, oh, you know what? I found myself like I got really pissed off, I don't know, maybe like 6 months or a year ago, because I was like, how come I have to follow all these stupid rules and nobody else does? And it was around the same time I was watching The Big Lebowski and I saw Walter Sobchak in there where he's like, over the line. And he pulls out his gun and he's like, does nobody follow the rules anymore? Am I the only one who fucking follows the rules? And I was just like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm losing it. And I realized that it's like my own, partially my own, but like what you're saying, society, my parents' rules that I just made like I have to follow this. How it's no fair. Other people don't have to follow this stuff. How come
yeah.
I have to follow this? And I just got so angry.
Well, and if you pay attention, like, I don't know, like I noticed too, like for myself, like a while back, like if I paid attention, like they were real hard lines of like where I could go, like
Yeah.
restraining me. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem that I think a lot of people don't realize. They think it's like, it's why guilt trips work, right? Because somebody makes you feel bad about a should that you think you should recognize, but really it's just a made up thing. And like whether you follow it or not, it should be up to you. It shouldn't be up to somebody else, right? But I think it's
Yep.
really hard to rid ourselves of that too. And I think that's one of the things I've noticed is like even if you've worked on it, they're really, really hard to get rid of. Like all those expectations you place on yourself and stuff. And so much of it is BS. It's just made up. That has
Dude,
nothing to do with anything.
and they sneak up on you. Like I met with a distant family member just recently for the first time in a while. And it was like great reconnecting. We haven't seen each other in a while. But then they wanted to meet up again. And I told them I couldn't and because I was busy.
Yeah.
And so then like that day they were like, hey, we can still meet up today. if you're free. And then I started feeling guilty because I couldn't meet up. I was
Yeah.
like, well, if I could push myself a little bit, then maybe I could do it. And then I caught myself. I'm like, motherfucker, this
Yeah.
dude making me feel guilty for I told him I can't. Like, respect my boundaries.
But that's just it though, right? Because it seems
Respect
like
my authority.
it was very much thought. But from there, but that's just the kind of bullshit though. Text message, right? Where it's like it seems like jokey and
Hmm.
like oh, if you still we could still do it. And it's like
Yeah.
and it just gets, it's annoying because it's like, well, you also have other things in a life and other stuff to
Yeah.
do. Like you shouldn't expect. Yeah. I mean, I think that's it though. We put a lot of expectations on other people and on ourselves, and it just is, yeah, it's too much.
And life is just a whole basket of problems nonstop. It never ends.
No, I always
It's
like
like,
the idea,
oh,
Nietzsche's idea of the camel spirit, because it feels like that, where you just have all this like burden of other people's crap and
hmm.
society's crap on your back that you're just lugging around, dragging your feet, from one place to the next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like book 10 of the Meditations where Marcus Aurelius is like, will you never be content? Like he's talking to his
Yeah.
soul. He's like, will you never just be content and okay with things as they are? And
Yeah, and
yeah,
he was
it's
like at the
great.
top of his game.
Right?
But I think
Yeah.
that's it though. Like, doesn't matter. I think that's also the lie we tell ourselves. Like, we tell ourselves we'll get this thing, and that'll be it, and we'll be good. But that's never going to be it. Because if you're already working that hard, you're not going to just stop. I think
Hmm.
that's why so many people find retirement so hard, right? Because it's like you're going from, 60, 70 hours a week to nothing. And it's like you're supposed to just figure out what to do.
Yeah. It's also like we're not just this one thing. Like we were talking about this week, how like
Yeah.
people have this all or nothing thinking where they think they're worthless because they couldn't achieve this one, th like they're not a huge success or they don't have a ton of money and they think they're worthless because of that. But like on the other hand, it's kind of why we always have problems because we're just this mess of like a whole bunch of different drives going on at
Mm.
once. And like if you just took one specific problem, you've succeeded because you conquered that one. But then as soon as that one's done, then there's all these other ones, and you're trying to get them all lined up and all perfectly completed, and it's just
Well, and
ridiculous.
when you only focus on one thing too, you end up systematically just ignoring a bunch of other parts of yourself that are still you that need to be realized. And so
Mhm.
they end up just like internally fighting, it becomes just a mess. It is
Yeah,
hard though, because there is that feeling, I think, too, that like if you just do one thing, you can succeed, right? Like if you just focus wholeheartedly on one thing, and you could, I mean, that's true, you totally can. Like if you just do all your time on one thing, but then you just don't have a life either. You are one thing, like,
yeah.
which is kind of weird.
I wish that somebody would do a documentary of all these like I don't know successful people like you know
Their
world
lives,
record world
not with
record
their work.
athletes and just be honest for a second. Like everybody knows you can say that like yeah your life is amazing because you do this, but like let's be honest for a second. Like doesn't it kind of suck that that's all that you did?
Yeah.
And 'cause, yeah, I don't think any of them are being honest.
Dude, they're
But
not.
you know,
No, I'm sure. Like it's, yeah. I don't know. I think too the telling thing. I think was if you did a documentary and like success and just looked at their lives, not their work, not what they're good at, but
hmm.
everything else.
Yeah,
That would be telling. I'm sure you might
yeah,
find there's probably a needle in the haystack. I'm sure you'd find there's got to be some people out there who are both successful and happy.
yeah. Right.
And I should add, and not lying to themselves. There's got to be like one somewhere, but other than
Well,
that,
like talking about happy, it does the more and more I'm learning, the more it all comes down to thoughts. And this is nothing new. Like Epictetus said this, 2000 years ago.
they
It's
all
not what
said it
happens to
thousands
us,
of
it's
years
what
ago.
we think
Yeah.
about it. Yeah. But it's like the more I recognize that, the more crazy it is because I'll be in a miserable mood and I'll be like, hang on, what am I thinking? Or sometimes I'm not even able to figure out what I'm thinking. And I'd be like, well, what would someone who's feeling like I'm feeling be thinking? And I catch these thoughts and I'm just like, well, no wonder I'm feeling terrible. Like that's a crazy
Okay.
distorted thought, and I'm just like chewing on that for hours. No wonder I feel terrible.
Well, it's funny. That's why, like, I think I find myself liking, well, not liking more, but like leaning more into Camus' philosophy because, like, because he ties absurdity and happiness together, and I think there's truth to that. Like, if you realize and accept that everything's absurd, happiness is a
Hmm.
lot easier because you realize that there's no conditions for it. It is like a choice, basically. It's like a way to interpret things. And
Right?
it's not going to be forever. Like it can also be, you can have ups and downs. That's fine because it's all experience. It's all living, and that's what matters the most. So, yeah, like that
Yeah.
accumulation of experiences. It's
Hmm.
tough though. Isn't it funny that these
Yeah.
people have been, if you, it cracks me like if you look at ancient philosophy and stuff and read that kind of stuff and like, or wise people, whatever, they've been saying things that like, it always cracks me up when like modern psychologists like, we just discovered this thing. And I'm like, they said that 3,000 years ago, guys. I think
Uh-huh.
you're just
Yeah,
stealing or you just figured
exactly.
it out. But it's like, we've been struggling with this stuff forever, which cracks me up because it's like we haven't figured out how to do it better. I don't know.
Hmm.
Surprising. We just circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what else is interesting that I heard? So like they were talking about the kind of our metacognitions. Like we get depressed about being depressed and we get angry about being angry and we get anxious about being anxious. And it's just like they're like when we look at lab rats and stuff, like we can do make them show signs like they're depressed, but they're not being depressed about being depressed. They're just depressed. We're like, when it
Like,
happens to us, we're depressed and we're like, I should be happy. This
what's
isn't,
wrong with
yeah.
me?
And then we're like, something's wrong with me. I'm good. And you feel worse because of how
Yeah.
depressed you are. It's crazy.
I always wonder that because I look at my, well, it's like if you have animals and you look at them, like they definitely have moods. You can tell,
Hmm.
but they like cycle through them fairly quickly because I think they just let themselves experience it, Like
Yeah,
they're
they're like
not,
feeling all bummed, and then their
then
nose
they're
is kind of
happy
close to
because
their
something
butthole, and
happened.
they smell their butt, and they're like, "Oh, yeah,
Something
okay,
else.
next
Here's a new
next
thing.
moment." Yeah,
But it's true though.
yeah.
It's like I think it's because like we refuse to like let ourselves experience it without that meta analytical thinking on top of it. It's like a bunch of
Hmm.
shaky chihuahuas, in a room. We just
Yeah.
thought like a mess. Yeah.
Yo
It is.
quiero Taco Bell. Yeah. Yeah.
So what do people do? I don't know. It's
Well,
tough.
I think it's catching the second arrow. Like Buddha talked about the second arrow, how I guess it was Buddha. We attribute everything to Buddha, but he's like, if you get shot by
It's
an
a
arrow,
catch-all. He said a
yeah.
lot of things.
If you get shot by an arrow, would that hurt? Yeah. Well, if you get shot by a second arrow, don't you think that would hurt more? Yeah, probably. And it's like, well, the things that happen to you in life, that's the first arrow, but our judgments
Yeah,
about
latching
them,
on.
that's the
Oh,
second arrow. And fortunately, that's the stuff that's in our control. Our
yeah.
judgments, our decisions, our actions, our beliefs, those are in our control.
That is true though. It's funny because we do make it so much worse when you think about it. By thinking about being that way and then wanting not to be that way, we make the situation so much worse. That is pretty
Yeah.
good. I think that was Buddha,
It
by the way, because that has the ring of attaching to thoughts very clearly. That is like one of his metaphors. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it
He
sounds
was also a big archery buff.
huge into archery and sneakers. Little known
World cha
fact.
world championship. He actually developed Nikes.
Out of his car using a waffle
Yeah,
iron.
I know, right? This guy, he could do anything. My goodness.
Everything. Yeah.
Isn't it crazy that once he got enlightened, people didn't want to follow him? They didn't believe him. And then, he died too.
Yeah. Everybody does.
Son of a gun.
It's weird, right? It's like
Yeah,
everybody.
son
I
of
know
a gun.
you read all this stuff and all these people are dead.
Yeah. This is something interesting that we should talk about. So, like, when we were having a discussion earlier the week, and people want to know about meditation. Okay. People think that like meditation is going to solve their problems. And
Yes.
it's crazy because it's sold that like, oh, if you have stuff going on in your life, meditate. It'll give you peace of mind. You'll get enlightenment. Everything will work out, sunshine. And it's
And then
like
people get
it's
mad why it's
it's the
not
exact
working.
opposite of the truth.
Yeah.
Because if you start meditating, you're gonna have more problems. Like whatever problems you have, multiply that a hundredfold because now your mind won't shut up. It's painful to sit in one spot for a long time and
Yeah.
you're not doing this thing that you don't know how to do correctly.
One of the coolest things when I was an undergrad was my one professor, he had a friend who was a Buddhist from India, like practicing and all, and like he happened to be over in the US at some conference or something, was staying with him. So he had him come into class and he did a 3 hour meditation session, which was really cool. So it taught us how to do it, taught different, ways of sitting, walking, all that stuff and all. It was really neat. And some of the theory. But one of the things he did say was, which was really helpful, he was like, he's like, don't expect results. He's like, that's the worst thing you can do. And he's like, know that like it's definitely beneficial. He's like, but people don't realize when they first start that it takes a long time. Like he's like, he's like, you're going to be frustrated more than anything else doing this for the first like year or so. And he's like,
Hmm.
but keep that in mind and know that, you just got to keep doing it. It's like anything else, you get better with time and how much time you spend it. Because like most people in the US, they're not in a monastery all day, that's their world,
Yeah.
where I think like it's probably easier to get into it. But so yeah, if you're doing it 10 minutes a day, you can't expect quick results. And I think the people do because that's what happened. I think it was I remember reading that like the whole mindfulness wave, in the
Hmm.
US, it started, there was some guy that had went to India, studied or something, and then
Ram
came,
Dass probably.
yeah, one
He's
of
here
them.
now.
Yeah,
Hmm.
came back and just sold it basically. But with
Yeah.
advertising and stuff, they did it the American way, which was instant results and
Yeah,
do
of
it for
course.
4 minutes, kind of thing. And it does
Yeah. I
help. It
mean, because that's what
totally
they do.
helps.
They
But
sell the enlightenment. They sell the dream. But
yeah,
it's interesting what you were talking about was like, don't try because you're not going to get anything. There was this book, The Open Focus Brain, where it talked a lot about meditation and like long-term, long-time meditators versus the the tryhards, we'll call them.
yeah,
And basically, like when when the monks and experienced meditators are meditating, they're getting this alpha brainwave that's like very noticeable on EKGs or whatever they're looking at. And so they noticed that this this brainwave, if you're a tryhard, if you're trying really hard to meditate, you can't get it. The only way that you can get it is by surrendering,
which makes sense. Yeah,
like giving up. You're just
which
like, fuck it.
yeah.
And then you got it.
But that makes
Like,
sense though, because you can't be, I think that's the problem. Like if you're, it's like a lot of things, right? If you're focused and you have an idea of what the goal is, you probably one have a misunderstanding of what the goal is. So you're probably
mhm,
aiming at something that's not really the thing that you actually want to aim at. And I think it's like we all have an idea of what we want to be and stuff, but then when you actually get it, it's usually different than what you think, right? Because like we didn't
mhm,
have that thing before. I think that's a big part of it with meditation is you think they're thinking too much about what should I get out of it rather than doing what you're supposed to be doing, which is letting those thoughts just come and go. And they can be some of them, totally. But yeah, it is very helpful.
mhm.
I gotta start doing that more again. I still do it
Yeah, you should
occasionally.
do that, Danny.
I know, right? Get back to meditating. Jeez. No,
What's wrong with you?
what the hell? I like
What's
doing it at
wrong with
night.
you?
It's nice
Yeah,
before you fall asleep. It's very relaxing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Once you get
I
back
don't
into
know.
it again. It's funny when you take a break though. I don't know if you've ever taken a break from it and then got back into it.
Oh
And
yeah.
the first couple times it's so
Oh
hard.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I just kind of do my shortcuts to meditation. I do Wim Hof breathing, which is like my shortcut to
yeah.
it, and then I also do this open focus stuff, which so it's a crazy stuff where you're thinking about this, you're imagining the spaces between stuff in relation to your body
Yeah.
and the spaces inside stuff. And so it's somehow that you do that often enough and that helps. I don't know.
There's lots of little tricks that I think that everybody's different too. Like there's lots of little tricks that work for people because
No, mine's the best.
it's the one that works for me. It's the best. Universal.
Yeah.
I like generalizations. All right.
Mhm.
Well, there's stuff.
That's long enough, huh?
Yeah, right. Probably. There you go. That's some stuff. We covered a lot. I don't know exactly
Yeah,
what.
happiness and meditation. We can just
Yeah.
call it happiness and meditation. That's the
Boom.
name of the
There
title.
you go.
Boom.
So if you like this episode, check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Like, share, subscribe. Helps us out a lot. We'll be back later this week with another episode though. Until then, later, Andy.
Later, Danny.